I want to read this to you. And I want to read it because I want to make sure I cover all the bases. Unfortunately, over the years, the church has allowed herself to be deceived in many ways. One way in particular is the acceptance and alliance with the government. She has trusted that the government had her best interest at heart. When she was offered an opportunity to become a legal entity with special, and I quote, special privilege, she said yes. And since forming this alliance, she allowed herself to no longer be governed by her master Jesus alone and betrothed only to Jesus, but instead to have two masters. As I mentioned, the church is not a legal entity. If you have .inc after your church name or after your ministry name, there's a problem. Now, I'm not saying that you're not anointed or you're not called or chosen or have a great message. Not at all. I'm sure you are. This, however, this is a very stark warning that God has given me, and I do believe wholeheartedly that you'll see the full measure of this manifest in the years ahead. The church is not a legal entity, but she can choose to make herself one. She has the freedom to yoke herself to whatever and whomever she wills. We know that. We know that that's how legal rights are established. The enemy can have a legal right because we have free will and we choose to yoke ourselves, if we want, to whomever we want. A legal entity is created by man-made rules, and it's run according to man-made rules. A 501c3 defines what church is, not Jesus Christ. You must meet the guidelines that the IRS sets, not the guidelines that Jesus Christ has set in Scripture. By becoming a legal entity, a church who incorporates herself loses the right of freedom of religion, not just in this small package, but in a big, big way. Listen to what a legal entity is. The creator of the corporation is the state. The state is the sole authority and sovereign head over the corporation that you have created. The corporation is subject to the laws of that state, and those laws limit the power. The corporation has no constitutionally protected rights, even though we saw John MacArthur rise up during COVID and say, hey, our rights are being they're being infringed upon. It was like gaslighting for the courts to give him those rights to operate. They didn't have to do that. And when it comes down to it, when someone is in office like we have right now, and the court system is corrupt, they can go right to the guidelines that when we became incorporated and silence you, put you in jail, sue you, and do anything they want because you have signed over your rights. The corporation is created for the benefit of the public, not for the church. The corporation is a state franchise, and the corporation is a privilege. Get this. You think that you have freedom? It's like American citizens. They think that they have freedom, but they don't. They're slaves. They are slaves to a debt system. They have privileges, not freedoms. Big difference. Please. It's like in Scripture when Jesus says in Revelation to John, the Spirit says there, reader, pay attention as he's writing. Reader, listener, however you're receiving this message, pay attention to what I just said. You're given privileges as a slave, thinking that you're free. That's the whole gist of this, and why God said to me, tell them to come out and explain why the church is trapped until they come out. You have privileges. You don't have freedom. In 1954, as I've shared with you, Johnson was aggravated by the church's influence. So he created the Johnson Amendment. This gave special measure of exception. Those who would submit to the government requirements would get the special, and I quote once again, exemption. What they were really getting was enslavement.